Perfect. Okay. So we are going to get started. So I'll be talking about product management today. And I won't just be talking about product. I'll be comparing product with many other roles such as program, project, and basically I will be covering everything about product management, how it compares to other roles, what it is, how to break into it as tech and non-tech. And let me just give you a little overview of the contents that we'll be covering. So as I mentioned, the comparison, what product is as like a 5,000 foot high level overview. And then we'll also get into a little bit of detail too. So everyone will feel comfortable at the end of the session, walking away knowing what product is and whether they kind of like want to be in it or not. Of course, that'll take more exploration. I can also teach you how to do that as well to really know if you want it or not. And then how to break into product. So I'll get started with the first item right here. So what is product management? Product management is a role within an organization that guides every step of a product's life cycle. So when I say product's life cycle, essentially mean from ideation to user research to design to develop. Can everyone mute? I think there's some background noise. Okay, cool. And I'm going to unmute you, Bahar.
Sure, sounds fine.
And you can hear it, right?
Yeah.
Sounds good. Cool. There's just some background noise from one person. So basically, the product lifecycle right here is from ideation to user research to design to development and testing, and marketing and launching. Of course, some of these stages of the product cycle are in different order. Like sometimes you launch and then you market afterwards, but those are all like minuscule details. We'll cover that afterwards. Basically, product management is a role within an organization that guides the product lifecycle end to end, and you're essentially responsible for that as a product manager. And the product lifecycle is the second paragraph right here. So this is just a good overview, just high level overview. Hopefully it's good. And I'll be taking questions at the very end. So if you have any questions, just feel free to write it down. More than happy to answer anything. So now that we have this, we're going to just move straight into, oops, I realized that I covered the second thing first. So what I was supposed to do is have a slide for this, but I realized I never made that slide. So I'll just talk about all of the differences that I like, just like off the top of what project differs from program from product. So an interesting thing is I've done program management. I've done program management that was kind of like a hybrid role between software engineering and product management. And that program manager role really taught me that program management or any of these PM roles are not the same even within the same company, let alone across many different companies throughout the industry. So basically something you should know is that when someone says, oh, I'm like this type of PM, let's say project manager, that project manager at Cisco is very different than a project manager at Snapchat versus at Google. It's very, very different. So the only thing I can tell you right here is the general themes that you'll see across the entire industry for each of these roles. So let's talk about themes first. Project management is mainly focused on scheduling, deadlines, making sure that everyone around you is on a given project is getting their work done. And when I say a given project, I mean, it could be, let's say we're talking about, like we're using Snapchat as an example, right? And let's say Snapchat's in its early stages. There's someone who's working on Snapchat filters. There's someone, and that's a project, right? That's a project for a whole team of like 4 or 5, right? And then there's like another team that's working on the camera button, making sure that's like really robust, and if you like spam it, it doesn't spaz out, and it's just like properly made. It looks good too. Everything for the camera button, right? And let's say the next thing is the top bar where you can toggle flash on and off, and like those small settings that you see at the very top. And then let's say the last thing is the actual send button, right? So these are all different projects, and for each one of those, let's say we're doing filters, right? Let's say we're talking about filters. There's a project manager on the filters feature, making sure that the engineers and the designers are getting all their work done on time, making sure that the product manager is making sure like is on track to deliver by, let's say, October 5th, which is next week, right? And that there's no possibility for them to like go beyond that. If there is, they should let this project manager know. Basically, the project manager is the know-it-all for deadlines and making sure that everyone's on track to hit those deadlines. So basically like a scheduler, but a scheduler that knows a little bit more than just scheduling. That's what a project manager is. There's a project manager, as I mentioned, for Snapchat filters, for Snapchat's like, camera button, for like the top bar, and also like for the whole send functionality and like where you pick your contacts. So out of those 4 project managers that I mentioned, all those projects kind of follow one program or higher level overall set of features, which is the camera page, right? We haven't talked about the chat yet. We haven't talked about like the video chat. We haven't talked about the maps feature of just like seeing where all your friends at. We're only talking about the camera page of Snapchat, and that's an entire program which has all 4 of those different teams that have 4 project managers. And guess what? There's a program manager that kind of oversees these 4 project managers. And again, this differs from company to company, but this is just based off of like one of the more well-reputed websites that have all these definitions that I looked at. I can send the link afterwards too for the source, and let me know if you want that. But basically, the program is a set of all the projects. And what does the program manager do? The program manager makes sure that, yes, they're meeting all their deadlines. They're on track to like launch by Q3, for example. And the program manager also is a little bit more involved than the project manager in terms of like what the actual product is about. The whole Snapchat camera page, they know a little bit more about it from a technical perspective, which is why you'll see TPM, technical program manager, very commonly across the industry, right? There's usually a T before program manager in many cases. So that program manager sometimes even writes a little bit of code, but their main thing is making sure that the whole program is on track to be shipped out by a certain date. And sometimes they have these project managers all reporting to them, right? Like they're the manager of those project managers. And sometimes they're just independent, but they generally have like a pretty wide scope. So all 4 of those things, Snapchat's like, camera button and the top bar and the filters and the send button, right? That's what the program manager would kind of be taking ownership of, kind of, right? And then there's a product manager who, this is like what the whole point of focus is today. And what the product manager would actually do is there would be 4 different product managers in this sense, and then like 1 group product manager. The first product manager is the product manager that is owning the filters. Like he's the filters, or she is the filters PM. What does that mean? That means that product manager is given, let's say, $2 million, and the manager of that product manager is like, you have to get these Snapchat filters built by, let's say, like 3 weeks from now. That product manager, like if the filters are not handed to the manager in a few weeks, that product manager is kind of in trouble. It's their responsibility. They're owning that product of Snapchat filters. And by owning it, they're responsible, and they're given the resources of developers, of designers, and sometimes even architects. If it's a very, very complex, like, complex, like infrastructural kind of task or something that requires a lot of like, heavy architecture design, they'll even be given architects. But generally it's software engineers and designers that come together to make a product team that the product manager sees and kind of runs. Product manager says, okay, I'm tasked to build filters. Let me learn everything about filters. So the product manager basically just like looks at other filters where, in this case, Snapchat was the first one, or one of the first to have like, filters on like a mainstream social media app. But they would just look at their competitors, and then they would be like, I know what to do now. Then they would delegate tasks to their designers and then get the mocks of how the filters would look. It looks really clean. Okay, that's good. The product manager takes the mocks from design and then hands it off to engineering. Engineering actually tries to implement it and build it. When engineering builds it and the product manager is really happy with that, then basically the features, like there's a lot more that goes involved that's involved. Basically, the product manager works closely with designers and engineers, and then after it's built, they basically launch it, right? It's a very, very high level overview. But to give you a summary, the project manager worries about the deadlines of Snapchat filters. The program manager kind of like worries about the deadlines for all 4 of these Snapchat features. The product manager owns filters. It's literally his or hers. And everyone knows like, oh, filters. Oh, it's Jeremy's. Like you can ask him. He knows everything about filters end to end. He knows when it will be done. And he knows what the technical limitations of his filters are. And whether, if you want cooler features, it'll be out in his next feature, in his next launch, like his version 2 or something, right? And then what happens with that product manager of filters of the camera button and of sending messages and like the top bar, all of them report to this group product manager who essentially owns the whole camera page. So that PM is like more high level, and they have an even larger budget to allocate to their 4 sub teams and make sure the whole camera page is successful. And that group PM, in this case, there would be like around 3 group PMs in our situation at Snapchat. One that runs the camera page, the other that runs like the whole messaging page, right? and like, let's say like the last one that runs like stories, right? There's like the three main pages in the user flow, which is like how the user can use the entire application from start to end, that Snapchat has. So there would be three group PMs, and now you can kind of see how what product managers do and what they're responsible for. You're like the CEO of your mini product, right? That's kind of like not a fully accurate analogy, but it helps you quickly wrap your head around how that PM that I gave you an example of, he owns filters. And if something's wrong with filters, it comes to him. Something's going well, they congratulate him. It's his product. So we'll move